can you truly build and win around Jayson Tatum and Jaylen Brown together?
I think so. I think it just matters like the pieces that are around them. Because I feel like those two have been like as solid as you can get, man. Obviously, JB had a struggle of a Miami series, but good players always have bad series. That happens all the time. So I wasn't really worried too much about that. And I think Tatum's really ascended himself into being, a big time performer in the playoffs. Even though he did have his games where they were low, he also had moments like, game 7 against Philly, the late stretch in game 6, to where he like really looked like a superstar. And he had stretches in the Miami series as well. He looked really good in those final, 3 games or so. So I definitely think you can build around them. You just have to be very strategic about the pieces that you put around those guys. And it has to be very consistent pieces, guys that are locked in on the defense side of the floor. And also another guy that can, maybe take some of the pressure off of those two, because they are asked to create so much offense. It's really ran through those two like heavy, and everybody reacts off of those two guys. So getting a third guy, I think, is definitely key, and just getting some just steady guys that can kind of like settle things down. That's why I really wanted to see Brogdon at least play a little more on the ball point guard with those guys. I felt like when Brogdon was in the game, it was more so, he's in with the second unit, or he's in with like JB, and he's just kind of like reacting off of Jaylen Brown, so playing more off the ball. I like to see Brogdon on the ball more because he's a smart basketball player, doesn't make a lot of mistakes, super efficient, and I think he can just help settle those guys down when it gets a little bit erratic sometimes.
Yeah, I am in agreement with you for Malcolm Brogdon. I'm not gonna lie. I mean, I that's why when that trade first went through, I was like, y'all traded away Malcolm Brogdon. Wasn't y'all asking for a true point guard? Like, here's your true
Yep.
point guard. So, and for their sake, good that Malcolm Brogdon didn't end up going. But to answer the question, and I'm gonna be honest, brother. Like for a long time, like I really did think so. I really did think so. And I also want to add this. I think Jaylen Brown, and I may catch some heat for this, I think Jaylen Brown and Jayson Tatum are 1A players. There's not a 1B in that. Like, I think Jaylen Brown's a 1A and Jayson Tatum's a 1A. And this is a very rare situation. Most teams, there's a 1A, 1B type player. But I like, there's nights where Jaylen Brown is the number 1 guy, and I'm like, okay, wow, maybe this team should be built around him. And there's other nights where I'm like, man, nah, but Jayson Tatum, he's just got the finesse, he's got the style, the power, like all of that. So like, I think they're both 1A guys. With that being said, that's why I think they should each individually have their own team and have like a 1B guy under them. I think this 1A thing, I don't know if it's going to work, to be honest. Also because like they're very similar players, right? So whoever, like, and I mean build, like what they can do, height and all that, like they're relatively around the same like player. So like defenders who can stay. I mean, there's not a lot of defenders who can stay with Jayson Tatum, but you understand what I'm saying. That's defenders who can match up with them. I'm talking about height. I'm talking about athleticism. I'm talking about, they're not going to get scraped on defense. Defenders who can stay with Jaylen Brown can usually stay with Jayson Tatum as well. So on those switches, the Celtics can't really get a mismatch and then exploit it. For example, right? Just Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic. This last year, like this last season that they just had, was ridiculous. They ran through the entire league, and if you look at a lot of what they did, is just simply getting that mismatch, whether it be Jokic getting the smaller man on him or Jamal Murray getting the big on him, and then just swinging that ball, exploiting the mismatch. I also look back to the 2020 Lakers team with LeBron and AD. Literally all they did was run pick and rolls until they get a favorable matchup and then exploit that matchup. I just don't know if you can really do that on the Celtics right now with the fit of Jaylen Brown and Jayson Tatum. And then on top of that, you talk about the team movement, the fluidity. I feel like there's none in clutch moments. Like literally every other player is just like, all right, Jaylen Brown and Jayson Tatum, what are they gonna do? And they just like watch them. Which, don't get me wrong, sometimes you need to be able to put the ball in your 1A guy's hand and say go. But then you have, in this case, let's say you give it to Jayson Tatum. Then you have a Jaylen Brown, 1A player, just standing there watching, doing absolutely nothing. So I think it's tough. And then my last reason why I don't think that they should continue to do this is because it's going to be wildly expensive, man. Jaylen Brown is extension eligible, 5 years, $295 million this coming up. Jayson Tatum is going to be extension eligible at the end of next year, 4 years, $318 million. Now, just between two guys, that's $613 million. Like, that's crazy because you're paying for 2 1A guys. That's what I'm saying. And you're paying all this money to not be able to have cap space to be able to bring in these role players that you need, right? And I don't know if it's going to work. So me personally, as crazy as it sounds, I don't know if I keep running it back, to be honest.
Yeah, it's definitely more difficult to build a duo, especially like when you factor in the money that you're talking about too. That's why I'm interested to see like Brad Stevens is saying all off season, like, re-signing JB is probably number one right now. I'm interested to see if that's a bluff or not, if he's really like thinking about that, or if they're even wanting to offer him the entire max, because that's a lot of. I've been saying, I said on 3 Point Weekly, I've been saying to my friends, there's only maybe like 10 players in the world, maybe, that you should give $295 million to play basketball.
Man,
Maybe 10 players, and Jaylen Brown's not really on that list for me. So that's asking a lot. Yeah, like schematically too, I do understand what you're saying too, like late game situations, running a pick and roll between those two. I feel like another thing, like they didn't really do that a lot anyways. Like they didn't even attempt it, which I would like to at least see it attempted in late game situations. It was always just Jayson Tatum one-on-one, or he'd get a screen from Marcus Smart or something like that. So I would like to see that. Maybe Porzingis provides a different look. Maybe that will provide a different look too, but we'll see. But it's tough to build a wing duo championship center team. Like the last time we saw that was like Braun and D Wade, but that's a totally different type of duo. LeBron's one of the best players ever, if not the best player ever. So it's completely different. That's why that worked, is because LeBron's so good and D Wade was able to take a true back seat. And I feel like sometimes with Jaylen Brown, Jayson Tatum, it seems like there's nights where guys don't really know which is the guy. So I see what you're saying, like why it seems like it can be like a 1A type of situation instead of there being like a real set number two and this guy's the best guy on the floor.